Hi, my name's Audrey. I'm an artist, and I'm here today at ESMO to talk about public art with Holly.
So, Audrey, what is public art?
So, public art can be so many different things. If you think about it, people have been making public art since all the way back to cave paintings, right? People just want to tell their stories on walls. And public art can be in a lot of different places that you can access really easily. Oftentimes it's outdoors, or say in a place where you ride a bus or train. I think the most important thing is that it's open basically to everyone, and public art is often exposed to the elements. So like if it's raining outside, the art gets rained on, and so it has to be really durable to be able to last. But some public art, it comes and goes in a moment. It can be like a projection of light onto a building. It can be a statue made of stone. It can be paint on a building. So public art can be so many different things.
I love that. And I know there's a special name for a public artwork that is paint on a building.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about what is involved in designing a mural. And so a mural, the word mural has the word mur in it, which means wall. And so we're going to talk about what goes into designing a painting that goes on a wall.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and actually you just completed a mural with the ACLU and members of the Los Angeles community called The Care We Create. And I'd love to hear more about that process and what it was like to create a mural.
I was an artist in residence working with the American Civil Liberties Union and the affiliate based in Southern California. And they wanted to use their building as a place to show their connection with community, the values that they fight for, and to really celebrate organizers and activists who fight for the most vulnerable people in our society. We worked together over several months to talk about who should be in the mural, what messages it should convey, and I also collaborated with an amazing team of painters and fabricators who brought the work to life through paint and vinyl.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Well, I mean, that's such a big project with so many stakeholders, so many people from the community had a hand. So what was challenging about a project like that?
I think for me, the joy of the process was actually all those collaborative conversations and discussions. And I'm someone who grew up really interested in government and what it means to be in a democratic society, and for that kind of back and forth and discussion to actually be part of the process of art is like a dream come true for me. So that part, you could see it as a challenge, but for me that was really enjoyable. I think the challenge was the building itself, because the building wasn't designed to be a blank canvas for an artwork. In fact, there are lots of windows on the facade and a lot of architectural features, and especially if you're putting portraits on a building, you don't want someone's face to get cut off halfway, or something sticking out of the building being in the middle of their face, for example. And so I had to really position things in a really specific way so that nothing would be obscured by the architecture, but also I didn't want the grid of the windows to make the images feel too boxed in. And so one of the ways I resolved that was by actually incorporating a really organic background that included a park landscape that's based on Kenneton State Recreation Center here in LA, and also plants that are native to Southern California that are often used for healing and medicine. And so those plants are interwoven with these different portraits.
Oh, wonderful. And you said portrait a few times now, and a portrait is an image of a person, right?
Yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit about who are the portraits that are on the mural? Who's in the mural?
Yeah, so the people in the mural were selected for their work on behalf of issues like racial justice, immigrants' rights, First Amendment rights, economic justice in housing, and LGBTQ rights. And it's about telling the story of social justice work based in Southern California. And for example, we have people who are at the forefront of like our present day civil rights movement, like the leaders of Black Lives Matter, and also historical figures like Upton Sinclair, the famous novelist, who was also an activist, and he co-founded the Southern California affiliate of the ACLU. So it's really about connecting like the past with the present and making it kind of like a 100-year-long like family portrait of organizing and activism.
That's really cool, and I know we also have a mutual friend who's in the mural too, Marjan, which is really wonderful to see her and her uncle on that mural too.
Exactly.
Really cool. I noticed we have a similar thing here too. We have a tree in front of us,
interesting.
and there's also a tree in front of the mural, and it was interesting to see how you incorporated that into the work itself with pouring water or.
So that was a happy accident, actually, because I knew that I wanted to incorporate Dr. Melina Abdullah, who's co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, pouring libations, and that ritual it's a spiritual practice, West African spiritual practice, to honor people who have died and to call upon the spirits of like ancestors to provide strength and guidance. And they would always do that at the beginning of BLM protests, and they still do. And as they're calling out the names of people, they pour libations or pour the water like onto a plant. And when the piece was being installed, I completely forgot about that tree, to be honest. And it happened to be positioned right below the stream of water in the image. So some things you just can plan for, or some things are just really happy surprises.
I think that's really great, and especially when it comes to public art, it is such a community. It is such a community effort, and I know that there are back and forth meetings, there's negotiation, there's consensus, but I love, but also those moments of joy and those happy accident moments, I think is what you can't always account for, but when they happen, they're just, they are magic. I know we tend to overuse that word, but it is.
Yeah, it's like with art, you can't expect someone to like feel joy looking at something unless you put joy in it, or else you are experiencing joy like while you're making it. And so that was something that was like really important to me, because one of the goals of ACLU in this mural wasn't just reacting to all the injustices that were just happening like on this very urgent basis, but to imagine a better future. And we can't get to that better future without putting in the hard work now, and also coming together as a community and caring for each other through that work. So that's really kind of the message of the mural.
Public artwork, comes with it, has a very powerful message. It shares something about the community that it is a part of. And I know from my experience too, I usually see, especially murals, they tend to be pictures like portraiture or kind of like a narrative type of painting. But I've also noticed that a lot of artists incorporating text into their work, and there's actually text in the Care We Create mural, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about that, because just as as important as the choices for the portraits, I imagine the word choices are just as important as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons why this project really had a lot of momentum going into it is because the ACLU's building on 8th Street in Los Angeles is directly across the street from the LA Police Protective League. And that's an organization that has worked really hard to protect police officers, including when they have misconduct. And so this mural was an opportunity to really address the inequities and the injustices that are perpetuated by this organization on communities throughout Southern California, while also creating this kind of uplifting space at the same time. And I was talking about some of the aspects of the architecture of the facade of the building. So the facade is the face of the building, and in addition to having all of these windows, there's also this marble slab, a vertical marble slab that juts out right over the entrance. And so in effect, it kind of splits the wall into two sections. So one of the considerations was having that portrait landscape read as continuous across the whole surface, but also allow this marble slab to be a place to put really powerful messaging that speaks to people's needs. Because right now, police departments' budgets are so vast, and basic public needs, community needs and services are so deeply underfunded, and that's especially been the case during the COVID pandemic. And so we worked with messaging from the People's Budget LA Coalition. They analyze like city and county budgets to see like where taxpayer money is going. And it really kind of put that inequity into like stark relief. And so the messaging that's on this mural says, we need housing, education, healthcare, living wages, mental health support, community, public transit, good food, arts and culture, and green spaces, and not more police. And so that's like, it's like the building's protest sign in a way. So murals can do a lot, like public art in general can do a lot to beautify a space, and they can also be a place to protest and to share a message that's like important to the community where it's located.
Audrey, thank you for walking us through that process.
Sure.
And we're so excited to have you today because we wanted to take ACLU's facade and make it that monumental space where you can tell a story about your community or something that's of significance to you, an important message, and see that I know we can't physically project it onto ACLU's facade,
but we can imagine it.
We can imagine it.
And like when an artwork is still an idea, that conceptual space where you can like play and brainstorm is really exciting when you just can do anything, right? And I wanted you here especially because designing public art, a lot of it has to do with like conversations, asking questions, listening, learning about a place, like what people care about and what kind of images would be like valuable for them to see in their community. And sometimes an artist may have that knowledge or connection already, but if they don't, it's really important to get that conversation going right from the onset.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not from El Segundo myself. I consider myself a visitor here. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what are some things that you think are important to celebrate or share on a building facing Main Street in El Segundo?
Yeah, oh, that's such a good question. Oh my goodness.
Just anything off the top of your head.
You know what, we are by the ocean. El Segundo very much has a beach culture. There are surfers, El Segundo Beach is right down the way. I think this and just the vastness and expansion of the ocean. I think we're rooted in that. I think also too, an intimacy to the town. A lot of folks, there's a lot of lifetime El Segundans who lived here. There's a lot of families. What are some other things that make one thing that I think makes El Segundo kind of on the map cinematically is the high school has been used as a high school in a lot of films. And actually it shares, the architect who designed the high school designed a couple buildings on the UCLA campus, I think like Royce Hall. And I think too our location to the airport. There's also always planes flying overhead, taking off. You know what? Something about El Segundo is the food. We have so much good food in El Segundo.
I get hungry every time I visit as
well.
well.
Oh my goodness. There's so much good food, and actually we are the headquarters, the city's the headquarters for Beyond Meat. Okay. So if we're thinking about the environment, thinking about our relationship to the space, that comes up a lot. And I know
and the Tongva origins.
Yes. I was just talking with our dear friend Mercedes Dorame. At one point, you would have Tongva communities gather here to collect salt. So for the winter, so you'd be preserving food stores, and it was also just a place to meet and gather. And back in there's a section of El Segundo, it's called Smoky Hollow, but that's also been home to many artists. So Richard Sarr, Allison Sarr's dad, had his ceramic studio here back in the day. It is a home to artists, and up until a few years ago, the Otis graduate studios were back here before they moved to Culver City.
I see.
So there is a history of arts and culture in El Segundo, and of course, the stories of the original stewards of this land, the Tongva. I think El Segundo is also very proud of its green spaces. So if you're coming in from Main Street, by the airport, you would see Library Park, and you would see those expanses. So there's a lot of special things about El Segundo.
And that's so awesome. That's why I think I love talking to community members, because they really have the inside scoop on like what are the stories that are important or maybe even lesser known about a place. And I also want to know, like, what do you feel like is important to maybe highlight about what goes on at ESMOA? Because I think it's not just the community that it's located in, but it's like, what does this space want to share, about itself?
I think the mission at ESMOA is to spread the spark of creativity and to connect visitors, especially residents of El Segundo, to art, is because art can show us so much about ourselves. It can invite us to go deeper, and it can also expand our own understanding of the world. And I think historically the South Bay, residents of the South Bay, you'd have to travel very far. You can go to the Getty, you can go to Lachman, you can go to Mocha, which is awesome. We live in Southern California. We're an artistic and creative capital. There's so many places to go.
You have a museum in your own backyard.
But you have a museum in your backyard, and you can walk to it. I think is something every community should have. Every community should have a museum, a creative space.
That's awesome. So there's
a lot on
There's a lot, yeah. And I'm also thinking about like the actual facade of ESMOA, the space that looks like artwork would really fit well. It looks like an upside down L. And so there's like a really narrow, like vertical section and then a band across the top.
Yeah.
And then you have these windows and doors. And so you could see that as a challenge. You could also see it as like an opportunity to think about like what could work really well in those spaces, and like what's the story that we want to tell on this building. And another question to think about is like, how much do you want this design to blend in? How much do you want it to stand out? And I think that will change, you know, like what colors you use, you know, do you have really like bold text? And so that's something I'm wondering for you. Okay, so we just had a great conversation about some inspiration, and so we're going to do this in 2 parts, and you can do this any way you like, but one thing we know that we want to incorporate this kind of the beautiful sunsets that you experience in El Segundo into the background. So Holly is going to actually fill the wall space of the facade with a sunset color that kind of goes from a blue to purple to orange to yellow. And I'm going to create individual drawings over here on this other printout of the worksheet so that I know what size to make it, and then I'm going to cut them out and we're going to paste them over the background. And so Holly's going to get started. And another great thing that Holly told me about at ESMO is the Drag Queen Story Hour. And so you said Pickle is one of your drag queen readers, and so I thought it'd be great to incorporate her because will give us a kind of welcome to what happens inside ESMOA. And so I'm just going to make like a quick sketch of her over here. So she's going to be holding up a book. And just so you know, like these are really rough sketches. We're kind of just doing this just to figure out where to place things, and you can always go in with more detail later on.
And I am trying to stay within the lines, but you know, sometimes you might go out a little bit, and that's okay. But I'm going to try to keep our windows of the front of ESMOA free, and just fill in our sunset colors. And you can use materials that you have at home, like pencils or crayons, markers, if you want to, or pastels, paints. Just remember to, you know, if you're using paint, just make sure you've got a protective layer on your table and maybe on your person so that you don't stain your clothes.
Yeah, you can even, what we're kind of doing is drawing and collage. And I often work digitally, but this is kind of mimicking what I do on the computer, which is I develop the background layer and I create these individual drawings that can be arranged on top. And so I'm eventually going to cut these out. So there we have Pickle. And then I'm thinking about what are some of you mentioned Richard Sarr making ceramics.
Yes, ceramic artist.
Did he do like wheel thrown ceramics or hand built?
That's a great question. I think it's a mix. I think he did a mix of hand building and wheel throwing.
Yeah.
And then I know from Allison Sarr, his daughter, that he and his brother, they made their own like patterns and unique motifs also in the studio.
That's great. And so it might be helpful to like find some, images of his artwork.
Yeah, like you said, research too, right? So you could have like.
He has these beautiful bowls.
Yes, the bowls. I love the bowls. So like you were saying, you know, this is kind of research intensive. So you could do searching on the internet
and this is an example where it'd be good to, you know, talk to the family of people that you want to represent, especially if they've passed, and see if they have like family photos from their archives that could be used for reference.
Great idea.
But for now, I'm just going to incorporate an image of one of his beautiful bowls. No erasers. Okay, my apologies. My apologies to Pickle. She is so much more beautiful than how I sketched her out here. So I'm just going to keep my drawings in black and white for now.
Okay.
Just to keep things simple. And like that might be an interesting approach to have like a really colorful background and say like just grayscaled images on top.
Oh yeah.
But you know, it's really up to you. And you can keep like changing your mind. We're just making our first iteration or first version of a design, and you could show it to get some feedback. You can take some time to look at it, see if you want to make any changes, and then go for version 2. Because one of the interesting things about public art is that it often does incorporate the feedback of people in the community and other folks. And so it's helpful to get some more eyes on what you're doing. Okay, so we got a Richard Sarr bowl over here. And then do you want to include some, you know, I'm thinking about how to include aviation and surfing in an interesting way. Because like the blue in the sunset kind of reminds me of the sky, but also the ocean at the same time. And can there be some kind of like hybrid surfing plane situation?
The flying fish. I don't know.
Or just like having, let's see, an airplane. Oh, my airplanes are not my strong suit. But having airplanes and surfers kind of like moving together.
Oh, I like that.
Would be cool. And hey, I don't see enough female surfers or other folks being depicted in surfing images, so I'm gonna make that a priority here. And so I might have some, you know, I was thinking about how that deep blue was also kind of like the night sky. And also thinking about like ocean currents and wind currents, and can little stars be used, like trails of stars be used to indicate that.
Something I think is really interesting, especially when Mercedes was doing her site-specific work here, and she uses cogstones in her work. And since their meaning is kind of contested, she's created them as to kind of be constellations or mapping markers.
Oh, yeah. So she would be a great artist to kind of talk with in this project too, in terms of potential imagery, especially for talking about like Tongva origins of the area. And so you talked about collecting salt. And so I'm just gonna make like a little triangular pillar of salt over here. And what else do you think?
I think, well, we might, well, I know in the Carrie Crate mural there are activists through Black Lives Matter, and maybe something from El Segundo for Black Lives, which is our own local organization.
Okay. Let's see, I might need to do that on another piece of paper. And so a great way to incorporate that is people like holding protest signs or wearing like shirts with the slogan.
I think also too education, and there's actually a lot of youth leaders within El Segundo for Black Lives too, who've been working with the district to get a more diverse curriculum.
Oh, great. So maybe we can incorporate some students.
I'm realizing too, as we're going through this process, more and more ideas are coming to mind.
I know.
More clarity, which is really cool.
Yes, it's always good to start from somewhere. Because it can be very intimidating to start from the idea of like, wow, I'm making a really large artwork for a building. So it's actually great to think of it as just like an idea sketch. Because honestly, that's where it has to start off. Because before you ever put the paint on the wall, it's good to have an idea of what imagery you want there. Oh, that background looks so beautiful. Okay.
Thank you.
And do you want to add any more of the sketches? Or, you know, I think we might have enough here. So I'm going to have some kids just holding books so that you know they're students. She's going to have her fist up in protest. And I put students in the ACLU mural too. And so this is, I think it's great to show youth learning activism from a young age.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so, pardon my rough sketches. Okay, so we're just gonna like see what it looks like to cut out some of these drawings and figure out where they can go. So it's almost like turning your drawings into like stickers.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. And sometimes putting images next to each other makes different stories up here that you didn't always plan for. And some you did plan for. But I think it's, for everyone working on this at home, it's good to think about like what's important to you. What would you want to put in your mural for the front of ESMOA? Things that are really special to you about this place. It's also good to really show like visual art and culture as like what makes ESMOA stand out here. So here's a little airplane. If you make the blue a little bit deeper, the drawings will stand out more.
Okay, I'm gonna just move our airplane just a little bit. Oh, now it's like traversing through the window.
Oh yeah.
That would be interesting. If it becomes a sticker or a vinyl or a decal.
Yeah, and we're talking about the motto of ESMOA being, let's see, spread the spark of creativity. And so we thought that could be good for the, like the glass, the windows on the front, and having that phrase translated into different languages. Okay, so here's our little surfer. Okay, see, it's like surfing in the sky. I feel like the pillar of salt could almost be like sitting right there.
That's so interesting.
So you can kind of activate the name of the building. Do you want to start working on the text in the windows?
I can start working on the text too.
Yeah, feel free to, maybe it can be incorporate the colors that were used in the background. And so as far as like public art goes, what we're doing right now is creating like a proposal sketch. And so this is just to get some initial ideas, because sometimes a description can get you only so far. Sometimes you just need to see what the idea looks like, or a rough idea to have something to react to.
And also just where everything is, that's like, working again with this space.
Yeah, and so like even though those are like vertical doors, you can have the message kind of span across them.
Oh, this is really...
You're doing
There's
great.
a lot of counting involved in this too. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe the translations can go in these vertical windows up here.
I like that idea.
Well, here's our initial design. What do you think?
I love it.
Right?
I want to see this now.
Right. That's how you should feel when you're looking at a mural design, right?
Yeah.
And so some things that we didn't put in just yet are like maybe some stars or different details. And you can think about, okay, maybe the surfer should go over here. Maybe the plane can go up it's taking off at an angle. Maybe the surfer is on a wave. Maybe these figures could be smaller so that they could be like closer to the entrance. You know, and you can like keep, now that we have these images here, you can think about how they can talk to each other. And what other stories can kind of like unfold from the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, since we're using a kind of collage approach to our design, we can use a glue stick to tack down some of our drawings.
I also like too, if you decide later that you want to place your drawing somewhere, if you decide to go this route and you want to place your drawings in a different place, you can always pick them up again.
Yeah. You can also use double-sided tape.
Double-sided tape. That would be your best friend.
Yeah. Or you could just start on a second version of it and take your ideas even further. We can incorporate a lot of the different things that we talked about. And also, since it is like a narrow space to put imagery, you can just put like a collection of smaller artworks that can kind of like dance around in that space. And the doors and windows provide an interesting framing for the messaging that you want to share with the community. And it also allows you to like see through the message into whatever's going on inside.
I almost could see like an extension if you were to go with like a vinyl, like spread the spark, like the language could be projected into the space and it could create a really neat shadow effect. Yeah.
Totally.
And then you're kind of bringing the art and you're bringing the public-facing artwork inside too.
Yeah.
Really
so something we haven't talked about yet is what we want to call our mural design.
All right, we need a title. How did you come up with the title for the Care We Create?
So that was a collaborative process too. And we knew that community care was the theme of the piece. And so we knew the word care would be in the title. And we're talking about like the dandelions in the mural, like spreading these seeds and proliferating. And so that got us thinking about like, okay, how do you get to that idea with care? And we wanted to emphasize this kind of collective work and activism. We were going back and forth with different combinations of phrases, and then when my colleague said the care we create, we were just like, that feels really good. Like that feels like what this piece is about.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it is that like gut feeling where you know that's what it should be.
I think for me, this process and what we're aiming to highlight is the joy that we share as a community. So the joy we share, I think, would be a working title for the design. Audrey, it has been such a joy and delight to make a mural with you today. And for our friends at home, we encourage you to share your murals with us. You can use the hashtag #create@ASMOA, and we're ASMOA.org across all social media channels.
Thank you so much for coming.